probably saw the title of this video and you are probably thinking to yourself, how reactionary can Arsenal fans be? Okay, it's not been the greatest of times as of late for Arsenal, but the season isn't done. We're very early into it, and already people are saying that Arsenal is facing a doom and gloom future. But here's the thing, for me, I look at Arsenal and it's not just the results that I've been seeing on the pitch, it's also what's been going on off the pitch. And with Arsenal, one of the key things that you need to look at is the finances, because that's something that the Cronkies always value. Even though they say a lot of things, at the end of the day, we all know that the Cronkies are in it for the money. So here's the thing, right? I just want to go through a lot of the contracts, or some of the contracts for the Arsenal players, and just give you a bit of context to the reasoning on why I believe that it might be doom and gloom in the future. And it's really important how Arsenal play this season and why this could possibly be a turning point for Arsenal this season, more than people actually realize. So some of the contracts we can look at: Declan Rice, he's on 240 a week. Odegaard, 240 a week. Saka, he's on 195. Saliba, he's on 190. Martinelli, he's on 180 grand a week. So some of those players you can say, yeah, you know what, they justify their wages. Odegaard, 240, he's the captain. Declan Rice, 100 million signing, very sought after, 240 a week, great. So when we look at Arsenal, we have to look at some of the contracts that have been given in the past, especially with Ozil and especially with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. When they were given those 350 grand a week contracts, it's never went well. After they were given those contracts, their performances dipped and they never recovered and they had to leave the club. So since then, when Edu and Arteta came to the club, there were promises that there would be a fix in the wage structure and Arsenal would not be giving that contract again in the future because of what has happened, especially with those two players. I understood them, I completely get it, and it's important to have a wage structure on which the entire club can follow, and so that the players have an expectation on what they can receive, especially when they play for Arsenal Football Club. But you see, we're getting into a very sticky situation when it comes to certain players. So I'm going to mention two right now. One, Kai Havertz. He's on 280 grand a week. And here's the thing, he came from Chelsea for around 60 million. Chelsea, even last season, when in the transfer window when Havertz came, they were in a difficult situation when they are essentially trying to sell as many players as possible. So when I look at Kai Havertz, yes, he's been okay, he's been decent. He had a great second half of the season last season where he scored around 13 goals in the Premier League, and I think he's done well in other competitions as well. But you have to ask yourself, for 280 grand a week, is it enough? Yes, he's also in this season, and I think maybe even in part of last season, he's scored in the Emirates in 7-8 consecutive games or something like that, and he was very close to beating Van Persie's record, but he wasn't able to do that because he gave away the penalty to Trossard. But this is something why even now a lot of people have a lot of criticism for Kai Havertz, especially for the wages that he's on and whether or not he is justifying it. For me, he's doing an okay job, but if there are still conversations on whether or not Kai Havertz is the main striker for Arsenal, if we're still having those conversations about needing another striker, then that's not a good sign for Kai Havertz, who is the main striker for Arsenal at this particular moment in time. So here's the first player, Gabriel Jesus, 265 grand a week. As said, I'm not changing my mind. If there was a player that Arsenal desperately need to get rid of and move on, especially if there is a chance in January, Gabriel Jesus is number one on that list. People can be infatuated with the fact on what he did in the first half of the 22-2023 season, but we need to move on from that. And since then, he just hasn't been up to par, up to standards. 10 months without able to score a goal, and the one goal he has scored against recently was against Preston. So overall, he just hasn't been good enough, hasn't justified his wages. And Gabriel Jesus, based on the information I can find, and maybe this could be wrong by the way, but he's currently on 265 grand a week. Now, why am I mentioning these two players? These two guys here are the two strikers, attackers, the main guys in the up front for Arsenal. If you were to look at these two guys, are these two guys the mainstays of Arsenal? Are they the main players? Kai Havertz, you can argue yes. However, for the wages that even on Kai Havertz is on, you can also make the argument that, you know what, it's just not as good as that what we can expect. Because if we were to look at, say, Newcastle, right? Newcastle, Alexander Isak is on 120 grand a week compared to Kai Havertz's 280. And if you were to argue who is the better striker, I think people will probably lean towards Alexander Isak. So that's why I mentioned this, because I want to give a bit of context here, and this is going to lead to a bigger problem that will affect Arsenal, especially come the end of this season, and especially maybe even in this January transfer window. So that's that. And Gabriel Jesus, I mean, he's on over double what Alexander Isak is on, and he hasn't even produced half of what Alexander Isak is providing for Newcastle. So that is why you got to look into these things with some perspective. So why is this an issue? Well, for starters, if you're being paid that much and you're not performing as well as the other strikers in the league, barring Erling Haaland, then it's not good for Arsenal to keep them, and they need to move on as quickly as they can. Erling Haaland is on 375 grand a week, but even on 265 and for Kai Havertz 280, it's very difficult to compare yourself to Erling Haaland, but you can see for an extra 100 grand what you can get with Erling Haaland's ability. And that just shows that with Arsenal, they haven't been able to manage their money properly, especially when it comes to giving their wages. And that can also be a big reason why Edu had left the club, because let's be honest, he's been very 50-50. I mentioned this in a previous video, and in terms of some of the signings and the wages that he's been giving to certain players, it's put Arsenal in a very sticky situation. So that's one thing. Another thing, which is probably an even bigger problem, probably one of the biggest problems that Arsenal have today, is how the other players are going to look at these contracts and what are they going to demand themselves. Now, as you can see with William Saliba and Bukayo Saka, they have around 2027 when their contract expires, hence they're on 3 years. So by the end of this year, they will have 2 years left on their contract. And as Raul Sanelli had explained, I know he left the club, but this was the structure that was apparently put in place after he left. Once a player is on 2 years left on their contract, it's either they re-sign or they move on. Now, with William Saliba and Bukayo Saka, and you can even put Gabriel Martinelli, even though in my opinion Gabriel Martinelli hasn't been pulling his weight as of late. Yes, he scored against Chelsea, but last season especially he needs to do a lot more, but that's besides the point. Bukayo Saka's on 195 grand a week. William Saliba is on 190 grand a week. We all know with William Saliba, he's a player that wants to be regarded as the best defender in the world, great aspirations, but he's also admitted that in order for him to be the best defender in the world, you need to win the big trophies. And over time, we've seen this with Arsenal, with history, and you look at Nasri, Fabregas, Van Persie, Alexis Sanchez. There's been so many players that have played for Arsenal over many years, but they just haven't been able to win the major honours because of various reasons. You can point to the Cronkies, you can point to the manager Wenger, you can point to the ambition of the club. And right now with Arsenal, the reason why I titled this video is because I'm seeing a lot of those trends back then, even now. So with Bukayo Saka and Saliba, as I've said, it's important that we renew their contracts. But here's the thing, if Gabriel Jesus is on 265 grand a week and Kai Havertz is on 280 grand a week, bearing in mind after Gabriel Jesus, the next lowest, the third highest paid player is Declan Rice on 240 grand a week. We all know the importance of Bukayo Saka in this team, and especially William Saliba. So it begs the question, how much money are these guys going to ask for in their next contract negotiations? Because it seems to me that they can easily go to the Arsenal board and say, hey, we want 300, 350, because they're getting to a point, especially with William Saliba and with Real Madrid knocking, saying, you know what, maybe I could go to Real Madrid, and Real Madrid can say, hey, William Saliba, here's 300, 400 grand a week. So you need to ask this question, whether or not William Saliba and other players will remain in Arsenal, especially if these other teams come knocking. And that's why I said the future is probably doom and gloom in that sense, and it's going to be very important for Mikel Arteta and whoever the new director of football is to manage these players and to keep their key players. Because one of the key indicators that I will judge Mikel Arteta is how you are able to tell the big clubs, get the hell out of here, you're not getting any of our players, and to tie down William Saliba and Bukayo Saka, Martinelli and whoever else, whether it be, I don't know, Partey, Gabriel Magalhaes, especially him as well. I almost forgot to mention, he is on 100 grand a week as well. So by 2027 you have multiple players, so that's about what, 4 or 5 players that are going to be just under 2 years of their contract by the end of this year. So how is Arsenal going to be able to deal with all these contracts? Will Arsenal be able to keep all of these players? Now, that is something that Mikel Arteta and co need to sort out. It's a no-brainer. You need to keep Bukayo Saka. It's a no-brainer. You need to keep Saliba. It's a no-brainer. You need to keep Gabriel Magalhaes, especially since he's on 100 grand a week. And if you have players such as Kai Havertz, Gabriel Jesus, who are on 280, 265, these guys are going to demand the top dollar. Gabriel may say, you know what, I want 250. Saliba can say, hey, I want 300. And Saka can say, you know what, I want 350. So this is why it's very important that Arsenal sort of deal with these contracts as soon as possible, because if they don't, then we're going to see a domino effect of players leaving summer after summer. And this is something I'm going to judge Mikel Arteta heavily on, because Wenger, as great as a manager as he wasn't able to tie those players down that he had at the time, such as the Fabregases, the Nasris, the Van Persies, the Sanchezes, and etc. And they all just left one by one, and Arsenal had to restart and go again with another project. And I believe, especially with the fans and with the way Arsenal have been going, especially over the last 5 years, a lot of people are fed up with it. A lot of people don't want to see another long-term plan, and a lot of people just want to see Arsenal win now. So it's going to be very interesting times. Another thing, with Thomas Partey, he's a player that's on 200 grand a week, and he's been Arsenal's best midfielder this season. There's no doubt about that. So it raises the question, will Arsenal extend Thomas Partey's contract, especially even Jorginho's contract? Because with Jorginho, there's been talk that he's possibly planning on going into a more coaching role, but we're going to have to wait and see on that, because I heard a similar thing happened with Mohamed El Neni, where he was doing his coaching badges, but he ended up going off and playing for Qatar. So that's another thing in itself. But with Arsenal, will it be a good idea to go for another player or maybe upgrade from Thomas Partey next season and go for a player that could possibly have lower wages but overall help the wage structure of Arsenal? For example, Bruno Guimaraes is on 160 grand a week, but his release clause is on 100 million. So that's why it's really important that Arsenal do much better with their recruitment, because as you can see, there are 5 players that are on over 200 grand a week anyway. Kai Havertz, Gabriel Jesus, Declan Rice, Martin Odegaard and Partey. And as time goes on, from a financial standpoint, keeping Thomas Partey may not be the best idea. And I'll Now look, on the field I'd love to keep him, but for 200 grand a week maybe it might be a good idea if possibly he gets sacrificed and Gabriel Jesus gets sacrificed, and then we go and renew the contracts of Saka, Saliba, Gabriel Magalhaes, and even possibly Gabriel Martinelli, because at the end of the day money talks for all clubs, and if we have to make these two sacrifices in order to keep the other players, then that might be a good idea. And you know what, with Arsenal they can always reinvest and go for other potential midfield options that are cheaper on a wage sense but can also improve the team a lot better as well. But that all depends on the recruitment of Arsenal, which is why I say right now, from what I've seen in this team, after 800 million, 700 million has been spent, I'm not that impressed at all with the starting 11 and especially the bench. Yes, there's been some decent signings, but if we were to really look at it, we've had about 4 left backs over the last 5 years, and there's certain positions that Arsenal just haven't been able to solve. The number 8 position, the left back position, the striker position, even finding a good backup for Bukayo Saka on right wing, which is another thing that I also wanted to mention. With Bukayo Saka, there are a lot of Arsenal fans that complain about the fact that he limps a lot, but here's the thing, we run this guy to the absolute limit, we run him to the ground, and I'm not sure how long we can keep playing him like this, because it's quite apparent that maybe his career could be shortened because of this. We've seen this with Barcelona and Pedri and Gavi and the way that they will run to the ground, and that's why a lot of people are begging Mikel Arteta and Arsenal to find a good backup to Saka. We tried Reece Nelson, that didn't work. Raheem Sterling, I have to say at this moment in time, I've had a lot of thought. I tried to be positive when I was reviewing the transfer window, but from this moment at this time, that transfer has been a big flop. The reason why I say that is because we have bought him and his wages are on over 100 grand a week, and it's practically been absolutely wasted. We're barely playing him, he's barely coming on, he can't even get ahead of Gabriel Martinelli and Trossard, who are on abysmal form, who were on abysmal form for quite a while, and he's still not able to get into the team. So if you can't get ahead into the team while Arsenal are not on the best of terms, then I don't know when you can, and it just shows me that Arsenal have completely wasted their money with Raheem Sterling. And that's the thing why I always talk about recruitment. The recruitment has been poor, because if you were to look for a replacement for Bukayo Saka, couldn't you have found a player or a potential youngster or somebody who could challenge, and or someone experienced who was a cheaper option but could provide a good backup to Saka in the right wing position? I'm sure there were lots of players out there that could do that, but Edu and Arteta just haven't been good at that. I have to say that the recruitment has been very poor, especially in the summer transfer window. And all we can do is hope and pray that in the January transfer window, we can sort a lot of these things out, whether it be the contracts, whether it be selling the players, and we're just going to have to see what happens from there. In other news, Ben White has been announced that he's going to be out for 8 weeks. He's been looking like he's been playing with an injury for quite a while now, and you know what, it's probably a good idea. I would rather 100% fit Ben White compared to a 60% Ben White, because we need all our players 100% for this season. And you know what, if people complain about that, then it is what it is, because we need to have good depth, and it should show whether Arsenal have a good enough depth to play out the rest of the season. I mean, there's multiple right wingers, right backs and left backs. Timber, Tomiyasu, Zinchenko, Kirill, Tierney, Calafiori. I mean, God's sake, we have so many defenders that it's actually nuts. But yeah, that's why I wanted to make this video. This potential contract situation is really alarming, and it's going to be very interesting what happens, especially at the end of the season, for guys like Saka, Saliba, Martinelli and Gabriel Magalhaes. And in my opinion, we need to keep all of them and tie them down to long-term contracts. Otherwise, if not, then it's going to be a disaster. They're going to leave, and especially if Arsenal don't win the Premier League or a major honour this season, then there's a higher chance that even say Saliba might leave, because at the end of the day, these guys are, hopefully they're ambitious and they want to win trophies, and it's been many years now. They just need to get it done this season, and that's what Mikel Arteta needs to do as well. But yeah, that's the end of this video. Sorry if it's all doom and gloom, but you know what, we need to be realistic and we gotta call a spade a spade. That's the way we gotta see it. Anyhow, hope to see you all in the next video. Bye.